Hey, it's Dan here from The Plague. Welcome to another episode of Hidden Gems. This is the show where we take a look at some classic albums that have kind of been underrated or overlooked over the years for various reasons. And joining me, as usual, is Nels.
Hello.
And today we're going to actually be looking at a couple albums from the 90s instead of the 80s for a change. I'm going to be starting. My pick for this week is Celtic Frost's Vanity, Nemesis, which... Trying to get it on there? Yeah, okay. And this album came out in 1990. It was kind of their comeback because we can't talk about this album without talking about this album, which was their misguided attempt at glam metal via Celtic Frost, which was not a happy mix. It's not a bad album. Like, I think a lot of people, if they just listen to it independent of the name Celtic Frost, it would be like, that's a decent album.
There are some good songs.
There are some good songs on there.
Cherry Orchards.
What's that? Oh yeah,
Cherry Orchards is good.
Absolutely.
Especially the remix.
The production's terrible. The band photo, as everyone is aware of, is terrible. And it's just not Celtic Frost. That's the main thing. Like, you at this point, this is their fourth album. You kind of expect certain things from them. I mean, their first three albums were different from each other and had, especially into the Pandemonium, had a lot of experimentation on it, but none of it was in this direction. Like, it was all like serious experimentation, not this goofy, glammy party kind of thing, which is...
That wasn't serious?
Well, yeah. Anyways, back to Vanity Nemesis. One thing I was kind of surprised looking back into this was how much it's 3/4 of the lineup from Cold Lake. Like, it's still Kurt Victor Bryant, Stephen Priestley, and Tom Warrior. And in fact, Martin Ain kind of came in halfway through the recording. Like, they were already recording the album, and he just came in and played bass on one song and co-wrote some of the other songs. But the difference is like night and day. Like, it's definitely a return to, the heavier sound, for one thing, the more serious lyrics. There's a couple songs on there actually quite fast.
That's true.
There's the production is just like leaps and bounds better. They worked with Rolly Mosselman, who people might know from the Young Gods and Swans. He did a lot of that kind of like post-punk, postmodern sort of rock in the 80s. And I think he was like the perfect person to work with them because it gave them a little bit of that industrial edge that they kind of explored later with Apollyon Sun. But it never gets in the way of the songs, and the guitar is still right there up front, like every song. So,
and it's the album that comes closest to having enough death grunts on it. It's not quite there, but it's very close.
This is true. It's actually the first thing on the album. The first thing Tom utters is a death grunt. So yeah, that was right there, like very reassuring.
Which I love. For some reason, I love that. It's awesome.
Yeah, anyone else can do that, and it's kind of dumb, but yeah, Tom.
Yes, exactly. It's a cliche if anyone else copies Tom, but Tom can pull it right off.
His vocals on this album are interesting too, because it's he had like that really deep kind of guttural vocal on the first couple albums, and then into the Pandemonium, he kind of kept that, but he kind of like, I don't know, matured it a little bit, but then he also did that kind of emo, kind of moaning vocal style, which was really odd. And then Cold Lake, he did that weird, like, kind of gritty, but kind of like sneering. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like really odd, trying to be kind of a glam singer and just failing. And on this album, it's kind of a little bit of everything. Like, it kind of has all of those elements in one style. It's really interesting.
Yeah, he definitely brings it all together. It's not like he abandoned any of that. It's all right there. The vocals in a lot of places remind me of some of the Cold Lake vocals, but they fit this music really well.
Absolutely.
In general, this album feels like, and I think Tom has said this more recently about this album compared to Cold Lake. It's like he's in total control. He
Right.
knows exactly what he wants to make, and he's crafting it, and it's all him, and it's his vision, and he just pulls it off. I mean, it's just really succinct, to the point, and it's all him, and he just delivers on it. It's awesome.
Yeah, and you can tell that like they must have worked out a better deal with the label by this point, because there's like infamously like a lot of interference and pushback from Noise Records during Into Pandemonium, and that's why that album, as great as it is, it like the production on it's not that good, and it's just it was kind of, and when the release came out, like it didn't have the artwork that it was supposed to have, it didn't have the lyrics, and there's a lot of things that were just kind of off about it. But yeah, this feels like a really complete package. Like it's exactly what like you said they wanted to do at this point in time.
Right.
Which is weird that they then like kind of fell apart. And
right, I know it's really bittersweet in that respect, because for me it's like the perfect Celtic Frost album. It's everything that I want from Celtic Frost, and then that was it.
Yeah,
pretty much. I mean,
right. Yeah, they came back in, I think it was 2000. I didn't remember. I'm going to say 2005, but I really have no idea.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, with Monotheist, and that was like also, I think, seen as a return to form, because it's also very heavy.
Yes.
But and as much as I like some of the stuff on that album, I find it a little like, I don't know, it's like a little too much. Like it's a little bit like the songs they're not as memorable. Like the songs on Vanity, Nemesis, like they're very distinct from each other, and like I find myself singing them just out of the blue. Whereas Monotheist, like that just doesn't happen. Which, I mean, that's fine. I think it was meant to be a different kind of album.
Yes, for sure.
But that's why I think like this album just kind of gets overlooked a lot, because people focus on the classic albums, which rightly so. Those are great, and then the comeback album Monotheist, which is definitely more in the Triptykon kind of like really heavy, doomy,
exactly
songs.
Which is awesome as well. It's just, to me, this is what Celtic Frost is supposed to be about. Right. And like you said, everything's super memorable. Like the riffs are they're just awesome. They're intricate without being like, overly complex. But there's plenty of really cool like timing changes and just really interesting ways that the rhythms change up. The super well crafted music to me.
Yeah, and it's not like, and none of it really is like goes on too long. You never feel like that was the problem I had with Polly and Son. Actually, was a lot of it was kind of repetitive, and it just felt like it never really went anywhere. And like you said, these are just very well arranged and complete songs. Yeah.
The only ones that are not my favorite are the two covers that are on there. But even those, I think they're fine. They're just not as good as the original material.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I don't know.
I mean, if I was a big Bowie fan, I might disagree, but I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the Bowie song was actually the best of the two. Like it actually worked really well. It's kind of like with the Wall of Voodoo cover from Into Pandemonium. It's like I listen to the original, it's like, that is not the same song.
Yes.
Like they really made it their own song.
Yes.
The Brian Ferry one's a little bit kind of lethargic and just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it goes anywhere. But
yeah, it's pretty much the one song on the album that I mean, I think it's fine. I don't skip it or anything, but it just doesn't live up to the rest of it for me.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the album cover, which is actually kind of cool. Like I'm not usually a fan of bands putting pictures on the cover of themselves, but I thought that actually worked really well, the way they did it, and the color scheme and everything. It's kind of got that more modern look. It's than like the earlier albums, but it's not like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a lot of the stuff that came out later in the 90s was very like, it's kind of influenced by the grunge covers that were like just very thrown together looking, kind of punk.
Cheap.
and very cheap. Yes.
Yeah. No, I like the cover. It definitely works.
So yeah, I think that's kind of my main points on this. Just that like it's one of those albums that kind of came out in a weird time. But I remember at the time, like a lot of people were really excited about it because it was definitely not Cold Lake, and Martin Ain was back in the band, and it was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's probably my favorite Celtic Frost album, to be honest with you. And one of the main reasons is that um, all their classic albums, I like them. One of the things that tended to drive me away from them back in the day was the sort of weird moaning vocal stuff. I could never quite latch onto that, and to me, it never fit. It was always grating and annoying, and it was only a small portion of their
Yeah.
music. So on balance, their stuff was really awesome. And this album just kind of does away with all that, and it's just like it's super heavy. Like you said, there's some really fast stuff on it. There's some slow stuff on it. It's got a good mix, and just the riffs are just super memorable. And the songs oftentimes they'll start up with one riff, and before they even get to the first chorus, they've done a change up on the riff, and it's fallen into a different rhythm, and it's just like really cool music, just like really well put together, super strong. Like writing and arranging and everything for me is just really good on this album.
Yeah, that's and again, I think that's a little bit of a throwback to like Morbid Tales, where they would have like these great riffs that would morph in, just
Yes.
some other great riff, like the arrangement was really kind of unpredictable, but they worked. Like they really worked.
Yeah. A lot of the rhythms, they kind of go from a straightforward rhythm to kind of more an upbeat rhythm, and it just like flows right into it. It's like effortless and yet not simple. It's pretty complicated, and it really comes off well, I think. Like they really I can't imagine it was an easy album to write. Though, I mean, it's not straightforward material. It's really good. At the same time, like I said, it's not like overly complicated, hard to get into. It's super catchy, and the riffs are just really heavy. And of course, there's the death grunts.
And they have like some actual decent lead guitar playing on here too.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
And Victor Bryant, which is kind of the one thing lacking from the first two albums.
That's true.
The first three even. But
yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of people who are into Celtic Frost that are like, well, if this album was recorded worse, I would like it better. It would sound more like underground, whatever. But to me, they hit the quality mark just perfectly to get across their point, and it's just it's perfect. It matches the album material really well.
Cool. Well, that's all I got for Celtic Frost. So why don't you take it away with your pick?
Cool. Yeah. So this is one of the picks that I think I thought of this like almost right away when we started talking about this series, but then I didn't do it for some reason. And it is the final album so far, I guess, from Shotgun Messiah.
People thinking there.
Violent New Breed. I hear they're doing some sort of reunion thing now.
Really?
Yeah, I heard something about that. It could be wrong, but it seems unlikely to me.
Yeah.
And it also seems unlikely to me that it'll be anything like this album. So if you're not knowledgeable about Shotgun Messiah, or you're haven't heard their back catalog, or if you have and you just haven't heard this album, the thing is, they at the time were obviously a very, very wrapped up in the whole glam metal scene. They were, in my impression, fairly successful at it, as not like a top tier. They weren't Motley Crue or Poison or anybody like that, but they got airplay on MTV. They made they were out there, plenty visible, very, very glam metal band. Good, very, I actually, even though I'm not a huge fan of that kind of music, they have excellent guitar playing throughout, and their albums are well produced. So yeah, and then this album came along, and my impression is that at the time the band was more or less done, like falling apart. There were only two members left, Harry Cody and Tim Skold. And again, I don't really know exactly the story behind this, but they went in a totally different direction. They worked with, I believe he's a Swedish producer, arranger, musician named Ulf Cybersank Sandquist, who gets a lot of credit on this album for performance and mix and all the other things. And it's just like super, very, very industrial, very like, I mean, the whole thing sounds like a freight train. It's just like super, super intense guitars, really, really heavy, really like, the mix is just like a wall of bricks. It's completely compressed. It sounds very, very industrial. Um, yeah, it was just like a complete difference from what I think anybody expected from Shotgun Messiah, which probably did them no favors. You know, probably
No.
their their glam metal fans of the past probably didn't get into this album if they even heard it. I didn't get the impression it was very widely distributed, um, and probably people who would be into this like very aggressive, um, very industrial sound probably would not think, "Hey, Shotgun and Messiah, their new album is going to be the one that I'm going to like." But yeah, for me, it's like a standout album. Like I said, everything on it is just like super heavy. It's just like there's not a lot of like super super complex stuff. It's just like straight ahead, really heavy, very very industrial. Excellent guitar playing. I mean, there's one thing that a lot not well some industrial music doesn't have a lot of solos and things like that. But Harry Cody, who is a great guitar player, does some really good work on here. And yeah, my impression is they just wanted to do something different. They probably had an album left on their contract. Let's do it the way we want to do it. And they however they did it, they got it hooked up with Mr. Cybersank, and yeah, and then it was a fairly unique album. And he himself, the Cybersank guy, has a lot of credits on other industrial albums and remixes and things like that. And the only one of his works that I actually have, other than this, was he did some mixes for Killing Joke on their Pandemonium EP. It has a few different Cybersank mixes on there, which are fairly industrial. They're not like, I mean, this is like just like crushing wall-to-wall noise, guitar, sound. Very, very industrial.
Yeah, I remember our history with the Plague and Shotgun Messiah goes back to the first album, because I remember
That's right.
on our like second or third issue that we did back in '89 or '90, we did an interview with Harry Cody for the first album, and then around the second album, I think you and I like interviewed their drummer at the time, Styx, when they came
right
to Wow Hall.
Yeah, they were very gracious. Got us into the show, gave us that interview. I mean, it was they were pretty cool. So,
and they were awesome live too. Like I remember build it
at the Wow Hall.
Yeah, and that was like, I think that tour was probably when they were started kind of morphing into like being a heavier band, because I remember they played, it seemed like all their heavy songs, plus they did like some kind of punky covers, and it was pretty wild. But I remember before this album came out, their label sent out, maybe you remember this, they sent out a CD sampler that had Enemy and Me, Revolution, and Side Effects on it, but it didn't have the name of the band on it.
Interesting. I do not remember that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, like they wanted people to just like approach this music like without any preconceptions. And I don't know if that helped or not, because obviously it didn't like lead to great sales or like anything, but
it's definitely one of the things I think of right away. It's like, should they have put this out as a Shotgun Messiah album, or, should they have it been a new band? And that's a super interesting question, because they probably got, people ordering stock for their record stores, people, making playlists for radio, etc. Maybe that's better to have this name on it, Shotgun Messiah. And maybe it's less of an uphill battle than having a new name, but I don't know. But if the music is so different, it really, it's a toss up, I think.
Yeah, because anyone that's going to look at that and be like, oh, Shotgun Messiah, okay, that's going to go on the, the glam metal show or whatever. And then they're going to listen to it and be like, no, this doesn't go with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Play this.
Right. And it might get your foot in the door, but what does it help you after that?
Yeah, the industrial people are not going to it's not even going to be on their radar, because they're going to hear
exactly
that glam band. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I think this album for a lot of people fell through the cracks. It does seem like, I mean, people know about it and there are a lot of people that appreciate it. It just, I think at the time definitely fell through the cracks.
It's interesting that Scold has gone on to have such a, varied career over the years. Like he's done his solo
Yeah,
albums, which kind of almost feel like an extension of this album, just a little bit more electronic.
right. Without that kind of just like wall of sound, wall of guitars
Yeah.
sound.
Um,
It's interesting. I looked up Harry Cody, what he's done after, and he's had quite the varied career since this. He let's see, what did he do? He man, I didn't write it down. He ended up, I think, on like a Tom Waits album, and he played banjo on it, and
wow.
just like all kinds of weird stuff. And I guess he does TV and music production for commercials and stuff like that. He sounds like he's very successful, wide ranging in a lot of different musical areas.
That's cool.
It's very awesome to see because I hate to think of someone that is this talented, and he's like seriously a vastly underrated guitar player.
Yes.
But you want someone like that to be just successful on their merits, which it's awesome to hear that he's doing interesting things. I wish he was playing heavy guitar on albums that I was buying still, but it's good that he didn't just disappear.
Yeah. Um, yeah, the latest thing I heard about Tim was that he is going to be playing guitar on the upcoming Frontline Assembly tour.
Really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
they're opening for Ministry, so that should be really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. What more can you say? Yeah, Ministry, some of their stuff that's very guitar oriented, that's actually kind of the vein of industrial stuff that this reminds me of a little bit. It's not exactly the same. And of course, Ministry does quite a variety of different sounds and approaches over the years, but the really guitar oriented, very heavy pounding guitars and rhythm stuff, that's definitely falls in perfectly with this material.
Yeah, it reminds me too of Nine Inch Nails Broken. Like if you took that to the extreme, like
Yeah,
1,000 times heavier, but it's
right, right.
really like energetic, guitar driven, but
Yeah.
it's very industrial sound to it.
Yeah, it's like the mix and the whole sound of the recording is part of the industrialness of it, and I'm sure that's Cybersank's work and his influence there. But yeah, it's like you took Head Like a Hole and just like turned the guitars up until they were just like blaring out of the speakers, and then never stopped. It's just like that. It just keeps going. It's literally just like a ton of bricks hitting you.
Um, that's one thing that's almost like overwhelming sometimes when I listen to it, because it's one of those albums that you want to listen to loud.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Also can be almost a little exhausting at times because it is
yeah.
like everything is just so upfront and overdriven.
Absolutely.
I feel like it's right on that edge. Like it's not like like some of these albums that are just like wear you out after 2 songs or something. But
Right.
um, yeah, it's definitely got that edge to it.
Yeah. Every time I play this album, it's like every time that the beginning of the first song, which there's no intro, there's no
Right.
fade in. It's just like bang. It's every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh yeah, right. That's this song, and then this, and pretty much this whole album. Um, and also, you know what? The lyrics, they may not be the deepest and most storytelling of lyrics, but they're really catchy and interesting. And there's a lot of cool little alliterations. Yeah, some pretty interesting stuff on there.
Another thing that I really like about this album is the way that it's sequenced. Like, there's a couple of where the songs, like at the end, they'll kind of fade out a little bit, but then the next song will just come right in, and it's like the way they timed it is just like perfectly. Like,
Yeah,
the way Revolution goes into Monkey Needs. I have like Rain going into Jihad and then into Side Effects. It's like every time
right.
it feels like there's a little bit of a lull. Like it's just like bam. It's like we're straight into the next song, and it actually works really well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I have to assume that that's why pretty much the producer guy gets equal credit with the rest of the band, which is again, it just Harry Cody and Tim Skold at this point. But yeah, it feels like a group effort where the production and the arranging and all that stuff all work out really well, and it all goes together. It gels really well.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up pretty well for this episode. Thanks everyone for joining, and if you have any comments about Celtic Frost, Vanity Nemesis, or about Shotgun Messiah and this Violent New Breed, please leave us a comment, good or bad. And feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And
Thumbs up.
we look forward to seeing you again next month. Until then, take care and stay metal.